Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the 5th YouTube session of the 10th fall edition of our Read for Pixels campaign, and it is the 10th anniversary of Read for Pixels, yes. So, my name is Anusha Kanasivam. I'm your moderator for this session. Today's YouTube session is also our 18th Read for Pixels live stream author panel since we started hosting panels in 2018. The Pixel Project created these multi-author panel sessions to be an accessible resource for writers interested in writing about female characters and approaching themes such as misogyny, sexism, gender, and violence against women with depth, empathy, and accuracy. We have a really interesting topic for today's panel: the Me Too Puzzle, a 10-year retrospective on sexism, misogyny, and violence against women in mystery and crime, in the mystery and crime genre. And here to participate in this discussion are 3 amazing, award-winning, and best-selling mystery and crime authors. So, put them on. Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hey. I'm going to read some really short bios, not that anyone needs it. So, to my is SJ Rozan. SJ is the author of 18 novels and more than 70 short stories and the editor of 2 anthologies. She has won multiple awards, including the Edgar, Seamus, Anthony Nero, Cavity, Japanese Maltese Falcon, and the Private Eye Writers of America Life Achievement Award. And just this year, she won the Anthony Award for the latest crime anthology she edited, Crime Hits Home. And then we have Meg Gardiner. Meg is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of 16 novels. Her thrillers have won the Edgar Award and been summer reading picks by The Today Show and the Oprah magazine. She's called Hitchcockian by USA Today and nail-biting and moving by The Guardian. Her books have been translated into more than 20 languages. And last but certainly not least, we have Dana Cameron, who writes across many genres, but especially crime and speculative fiction. Her work, inspired by her career in archaeology, has won multiple Agatha, Anthony, and Cavity Awards and earned an Edgar Award nomination. Her latest book is a thriller, Exit Interview, which is also known as J novel, and it's available right now. Okay, so aside from joining today's Read for Pixels live stream, Dana, Meg, and SJ have also generously donated some super exclusive goodies to the stack of author treats we have set up as perks for donors at the Read for Pixel Rally Up fundraising page. Okay, I'm going to go through them. So first is Dana's. So Dana has a really amazing bundle. It's Dana Cameron's Thrills, Spills, and Scares Book Plus Swag bundle. And this is for US donors only. Dana is offering one supercharged book and swag bundle that will not only bring on the thrills, spills, and scares, but also give you some food for thought. So this bundle is basically gives you different types of reading experiences. So it contains the urban fantasy read, which is a signed and personalized paperback of Pandora's Orphans, a Fangborn collection. The crime and thriller read, which is a signed and personalized paperback copy of Exit Interview. A horror read, which is a signed and personalized special edition paperback of Giving the Devil His Due, which is the Pixel Project's first charity anthology consisting of 16 short stories, including an original story from Dana. And this is actually a collector's edition because it's currently out of print, so it's a very rare treat. And finally, it's some swag. So there is one set of Fangborn bookplates and one limited edition Giving the Devil His Due bookplate. So SJ is offering two very special treats for US donors. The first was a hand-annotated first edition hardcover copy of her Barry Award, McCavity Award, Anthony Award, and Dilys Award nominated The Shanghai Moon, the ninth book in her celebrated Lydia Chin and Bill Smith series. This book contains SJ's handwritten personal insights and notes into Lydia and Bill's world, providing a fuller, richer reading experience. It's truly one of a kind treat, and SJ is only adding her own handwritten notes in honor of the 10th anniversary of Read for Pixels campaign. Now, this book has actually been snapped up. A donor who wishes to remain anonymous has donated a cool $225 for the annotated copy, and thank you so much to you, whoever you are.
Thank you to whoever you are.
Yes. And but there's still something else left. So There are 3 copies of The Mandarin Plaid. This is the 3rd book in SJ's long-running Magnificent Lydia Chin and Bill Smith series. So 3 donors can get 1 copy each. These are hardcovers. They are also out of print, and they come from SJ's personal stash. So it's a really great way to snag a rare collectible item while donating to the Pixel Project's work. And remember, there are only 3 of this available, so donate now to get yours. And finally, we have Meg's treat. So this is for international donors. Meg has really graciously donated a 30-minute one-to-one chat to be claimed by one Read for Pixels donor who is an aspiring crime author. Meg will be happy to chat about the art and craft of writing and the business of publishing with you. It's a very rare opportunity to get insights from an experienced crime mystery author, so don't wait to donate and get this treat. We've raised $3,185, which is 31%, towards our $10,000 goal so far. So please do give generously before the fundraiser ends in October. All funds go towards the Pixel Project's work to help end violence against women. All right, so one last thing before we get into the discussion. You, the audience, will also be able to ask them questions live. Just make sure you're logged into a YouTube account, and you can type in your questions in the chat box, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. And Juliana, who is today's producer and chat box moderator, will relay them to me to read out to you. Okay, so. Okay, I hope the streaming is good because apparently there's some technical difficulties, but here we go. All right, so let's do a little introduction first to the panel. So crime and mystery fiction is one of the most widely read genres in the world, second only to romance. In fact, Agatha Christie, who is universally regarded as the queen of the mystery genre, is also regarded by many as the best-selling author of all time. The genre has traditionally not been kind to women. Indeed, certain subgenres such as noir and hard-boiled frequently use sexist tropes such as designating dead female victims as the catalyst for the plot, falling back on tired rape tropes to spur the male detective's character development, making gender-based violence such as stalking and femicide the focus of the plot, and so on. These stereotypes and tropes are so ingrained in certain subsets of the genre that in 2018, the Staunch Book Prize was founded to honor crime mystery thriller novels where no woman was beaten, stalked, sexually exploited, raped, or murdered. Now, the Pixel Project created Read for Pixels campaign 10 years ago because we recognize that storytelling, and storytellers, including authors in pop culture, play a key role in awareness raising when it comes to difficult social issues such as violence against women. However, we were and we still are keenly aware that popular genre fiction, including mystery and crime, reflects the sexism, misogyny, and violence against women across societies, and in many cases plays a role in perpetuating these issues by normalizing such beliefs. Now, in honor of our 10th anniversary, today's panel will discuss how the mystery crime genre has progressed and changed over the past decade with regards to sexism, misogyny, and violence against women in the genre's stories and books, as well as what the mystery crime community, including authors, readers, and publishers and fandoms, can do about it. So with that in mind, let's get the discussion started. Over the past 10 years, the authors and creators of crime mystery and other genre fiction have used storytelling for critiquing and presenting important social issues in current affairs. There seems to have been a move for the better, where there is less gratuitous violence, specifically VAW in crime and mystery, and more depictions of well-rounded female characters with agencies and stories of their own. So the first question is, do you think that this is actually the case? And if so, why do you think this has happened? Let's start with SJ, since she's next to me.
Yeah, I do think it's the case, absolutely. And I think there are a number of reasons that it happened, the most important of which is demands from readers, mostly women, who got tired of giving a pass to the virgin or whore trope that then got the ball rolling. That people women readers wanted to see women characters like themselves, and if women were murdered, which in my books does happen, they want it to be for a reason, a motive, not just because that's a woman, she's disposable, and now we can go on and see how the men react to that. So I think it's definitely been true, and I think that the pressure from women readers has not changed the game so much for writers, because there have always been a lot of women writers like us not playing that virgin and whore game, but it's brought pressure on publishers, on the publishing world, to look at other kinds of writers from the ones they've been looking at, and to look at other kinds of books from the ones they've been publishing, so that readers could get what they wanted. So I absolutely think it's changed. It's not wonderful, but it's good, and it can make it wonderful eventually. And I absolutely put it down to readers.
Mm. Right,
I'd also
yeah, go
sorry.
on.
Okay, I'd also say, the readers and writers who belong to organizations like Sisters in Crime, for example, who keep track of how and when women authors are published and when they get reviewed, and that's been several decades now. And I think those are both writers and readers, and I think that was been a really important organization. I think more recently we also have a push from crime writers of color, who are helping work toward a more intersectional kind of feminism, and bringing more and diverse female characters of every kind of occupation, or whether they're PI or whether it's a traditional mystery, to readers. And I think those have both been really instrumental. Again, yeah, as SJ says, not perfect, not there yet, but significant strides.
Right. And I think adding to what SJ said, I think readers now have more avenues to express their desires and opinions for good and ill. But it's been very empowering for readers to be able to take to social media and talk about what they like, what they hate, what they're sick of. And clearly a huge cohort of female readers has really helped lead a charge to say, we're tired of these old stereotypes where they're cliches, they are worn out. And as just even purely on wanting a book as a diversion, they're sick of that stuff. Not to mention, the more important, powerful social points that you can get when you deal with more well-rounded female characters and their position in the story. 10 years ago, it was about 10, maybe 15 years ago, I read for a competition for unpublished writers, submitting the first 10 pages of a crime novel. And I was, aside from some wonderful entries, I was fuming at how many, and they were largely male writers, were submitting stories where there was a dead prostitute on page one. That's how you open every story. It got to the point where I started to write at the top of the page just prostitute, and then there were so many, I just started writing P and those stories weren't flying then. I, as a reader, was already just sick of them, and I don't see so many stories published now that have that stereotype anchoring the plot. So I think the ship has turned a little bit.
Although Meg, now you make me want to write a story with a dead prostitute on page one that is a feminist.
You could.
That would be a great exercise. Yeah. Really, we should please do it.
I was thinking too that in terms of those tropes that seem to be slowly going away, is the one that always drives me up a wall is the notion that a woman only has agency to take action once she has been violently assaulted or raped or immediately, and that's the only thing that could prompt her to take action, was like she has to rebuild herself after this catastrophic event. And it really is so boring, and it's not the only way that women get motivated to do things, for sure. I mean, and I think that's sort of my P on the first page is,
Okay.
yeah, it was a T for trauma, you know. Like,
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, cool. All right. So, y'all's three of you have been writing crime mystery for like 15 years, more than we've been on air. In your opinion, why does crime mystery as a genre still seem to be male dominated and misogynistic, even though some of the foremost crime mystery authors, including the three of you, Agatha Christie, Dorothy Sayers, Marjorie Ellingham, Val McDermid, they're all women?
You looked at the planet. Dana, go ahead.
I don't know. It's one of those things I find really funny. One thing that immediately popped into mind was that I've spoken with, again, mostly male writers who say, well, you know, women only write cozies, and cozies are pure fantasy. And I'm thinking of the way that,
as opposed to, you know, Clive Cussler. I mean, never mind.
right? No. As opposed to noir, which is hard-boiled and gritty and real. And I would argue that's
Not
a bigger. No, I just argue that that's as big as a fantasy as like me writing werewolves, you know, taking power and everything. It's like when you are like, yeah, name one guy you know who is a noir character who actually does things, as opposed to name someone in your personal life who's been affected by crime and has tried to do something as a result of that. And I think that's the notion that these cozies are sweet and nice, and just because they may start as, I'm trying to remember who said it, but after the blood has dried on the library floor, doesn't mean they don't deal with issues of legality and justice and what's right versus, you know, what's legal, that sort of thing. So I think in many ways, looking at the way crime affects someone in a cozy, for example, as just one element of this, is kind of interesting to see how people respond to that.
Tell them that cozies are like Greek drama where the violence is kept off stage.
Yep. Oh, nicely done. And it's usually, you know, in the small community or family. It's very specific.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
There's lots of screaming afterwards, but it's what they don't show it.
Yeah. There's lots of rending and maybe the language is a little nicer, but I just find that really interesting because if you read, I mean, Agatha Christie, for example, even, you know, Poirot or Miss Marple, that's some gritty stuff. You go back after you've consumed them first as a reader, it's like, whoa, this is some dark stuff here. So
She had a really deep understanding of human motivation and of motives and of what could make seemingly reasonable people do such an unreasonable thing as to kill another person. She didn't need the mean streets to prove that people could be mean. And I think that on the one hand, I understand Chandler's motivation for, as he said, bringing crime back into the gutter where it belongs, because it had gotten a little frothy when he started. But the idea, the pendulum that seemed to have swung was the one that said that the darkness was the point, that the mean streets and the fog rising from the sewers and that kind of thing was more authentic than the little old lady in the cottage with the body in the backyard. And in fact, neither of them is authentic. Crime literature is all allegory. All literature is allegory, but crime literature is allegory of right and wrong. And as you said, Dana, you don't need to see all this stuff happen, and you don't need the smell of the streets to talk about right and wrong. And I think that was the swinging. But in a way, what happened, I think, is that crime literature, which was written by women for a long time, was wrenched out of women's hands the same way cooking was wrenched out of women's hands when restaurants became a thing, and you could make money and you could be famous, and suddenly there was a thing called a chef, and they were all men. And I think the same thing happened when crime literature rose to the level of you can make money at this. It was wrenched away by men, and I think that's a PhD thesis somebody needs to write. But I think
interesting point. Yeah.
I think that's what happened. It took us a long time to realize, just like it took us a long time to realize that all these famous chefs could as easily be women. It took us a long time to realize that men did not have that monopoly that they had convinced us they had.
This is slightly moving off the original question, but on the issue of chefs, I read a comment not that long ago that about cooking shows, and that any cooking show fronted by a male chef is about adventure. It's about traveling the world to explore the cuisines and the people and the places where the food is made. The female cooking shows are about home.
Interesting.
I think
So perhaps that's the way people started looking at crime. If it happens behind the doors of a house, then what is it? It's just a women's crime.
It's just right. It's just.
Yeah. Whereas the men are out there in the streets punching each other in the head.
Right. which is the important stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think there have been any changes or any change at all in the way mystery and crime novels and stories have handled sexism, misogyny, and violence against women over the past 10 years? Shall we start with Meg?
Well, I think, yes, in general, like we said, the people we're getting sick of the stereotypes where now I think among people who read a lot, they would understand the phrase fridging a victim. Whereas that means that like there were stories where the woman's death happens basically to motivate the male character. And he discovers that by walking into her apartment looking for her, can't find her, opens the refrigerator, and there she is. She's been, murdered and stuffed inside the fridge. And apparently that was common enough that the term fridging became known as the motivating. It wasn't, there wasn't a chef salad inside that fridge. It was.
It was her head.
Yes, exactly. So now readers, but if you mention it to a lot of readers, they just nod and go like, "Oh yeah, they don't want that." It's understood as trope in the bad sense. That don't do that. Don't have some beautiful dead innocent person who was spent her life rescuing puppies, but we don't need to hear about any of that. It's just that he left her, and so that's what's going to motivate him to go out and commit mayhem.
That's also
so I do think that it is people are tired of it. They're aware of it. They don't need that kind of stuff on their packing their bookshelves anymore.
Yeah, I think there's another interpretation of fridging that I'm particularly fond of, is like the notion that the woman is in a refrigerator someplace and there's only a certain amount of time before she'll suffocate, and that's used as the motivation. And what I find really funny about that is that I guess in the second Deadpool movie, there was an actual, literal example of that sort of thing. And when someone explained it to Ryan Reynolds, he goes, "Oh gosh, that's horrible. I'll never do that again." So if Deadpool can learn that fridging is not cool. I think anyone can. So it's like, take that to heart. But it's yeah, it's just, I mean, there are psychological thrillers that I really enjoy, but having them become more and more grotesquely fixed on the torture of women. I'm not going to name names, but I thought 2 shows in a row where they had women impaled on antlers, or 2 books or something, and I'm like, really, come on, it's not artistic. It's over the top and stupid and horrifying, and we don't need to see that to understand how bad someone is. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, and I don't think I'm the only writer. I mean, I'm the only writer I can say this about. But when I wrote The Mayors of New York, the I I don't outline, but I did know that the mayor of New York in question was a woman, and that her child had run away. And I thought, okay, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make that child a boy, because the idea that there is a lost 15-year-old girl out on the streets is a whole other thing from a lost 15-year-old boy. And I didn't want to get into it. I didn't want that whole vulnerability and, oh my God, what's going to happen? Somebody's going to find her and horrible things are going to happen to her. You know, it just, that whole question of female vulnerability as a trigger, as the thing that gets the plot moving, is, you know, everybody's vulnerable, and we're all vulnerable to the same things, but the fears are different. And I thought I'm not going to get into that. And I think I remember Sarah Paretsky saying years and years and years ago that she would not write a story in which VI was in danger of being raped. That she's just not going to do it, because in real life, that's a fear that all women live with all the time. But it's also something that wasn't likely to happen to VI. Other things were. She could get, you know, shot and knifed and all kinds of terrible things, and they did. But that was just something that she was not, that the male detective didn't have to deal with, and VI was not going to have to deal with. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I
think, okay, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it brings us to the next question, which is discussing violence against women in the public discussion of violence against women. It's been a taboo topic for many, many years, which is why many advocates and activists still talk about this wall of silence around violence. Yet VAW, sexism, misogyny continue to be staple tropes in crime and mystery, as you three were saying. And especially in pop culture mediums, be it novels that begin with missing girls, a television streaming series with plots that are powered by serial murders of women being impaled on antlers, or movies where female characters are deemed too uppity or powerful and they are put in their place, frequently by murder. So do you think that there have been any improvements on this front in the past 10 years, with the Me Too movement kicking off a lot of discussion about these issues?
Well, if you're asking, has there been more public awareness of these issues? Absolutely.
Discussion.
I think the Me Too movement was, I remember when it absolutely began, and it was this little, and it wasn't a movement. And I read something on Twitter, and somebody said something, and somebody else, you know, hashtag Me Too. And I thought, God damn it. And I hashtag Me Too too, you know, and that was like the third day of the movement. And suddenly it was everywhere. And all women were looking at each other saying, you too? You know, I thought it was just me, especially when the assault doesn't come up to the level of rape. You know, we all have experienced that, and we've all just, you know, gone on. You know, it was me and that guy, and, you know, he was a dickhead, and, you know, but suddenly we're all looking at each other and saying, wait a minute, that wasn't right, was it? I shouldn't have felt bad about that, and I should have socked him in the teeth, and I should, you know, and I think that acknowledgement from women to other women that it was not that if it isn't forcible rape, it's still assault, and we've all been through it. And then men hearing us and realizing, wait, my sister, my wife, my mother, really? And I think there's been a big curtain rising, sort of, or light turning on, or whatever,
Yeah.
Illuminating this previously hidden, and because it was hidden, really just not known to a lot of people, this topic. And I think in the problem in crime literature is that that's what we deal in, is secrets that then become known. So it's harder for us. We're already there, as crime novelists. It's already, something bad happened in the past, and that's what we do, is reveal it. So making that transition from this sudden light of awareness to doing it in crime literature, I think is harder. Am I making sense to anybody?
Yeah,
You guys
yeah,
on
yeah.
YouTube, am I making sense to you?
You are making perfect sense, and I think you're right
Yes.
that it can't be hidden anymore. It can't be pretended that this is just something that happens to the women with the P in front of their name. That this is, and it isn't just the stranger in the bushes.
Right, and it isn't the 13-year-olds dressing like hoes, and it isn't the way you walked, and it wasn't any of that. And there's so many of us who've had these experiences that it can't just be the woman's fault, or if it is, it's the fault of half the population being assaulted by the other half. And I think that people have you can't stuff that genie back in the bottle now that people have seen each other's experiences.
Meg, what do you think? Has crime and mystery been able to address these over the past 10 years? Has it changed?
I don't know if it's
been
changed.
addressed?
I think on a large scale, these changes are not reflected immediately in literature. That it's at a minimum, novelists take a while to put this in their books, and then it takes a while longer to publish. But I think, kind of, again, moving the needle a tiny bit, the slow turning of this massive tanker is starting to show. And I was wondering whether anybody thought that there had been stuff that had gone, I don't want to say too far, because I don't think you necessarily can go too far, but books that turned out to seem preachy, or they were jumping on a bandwagon, like they would like a hashtag on their cover or something like that. And nothing really comes to mind that people weren't trying to exploit Me Too gratuitously for.
I'm sure there were people who were. I can't think of anything offhand either, and I think that it's kind of a little hard to exploit. I mean, what would you really say? And I think that there are so many books being offered to publishers that they didn't need to do those books. There were people who thought, I got a great thing here. It's Me Too, only it wasn't. She's lying, and so she gets killed. And really,
yeah, Dana, what do you think? I want to ask, because of the Me Too movement, have readers been commenting more on crime and mystery novels, that commenting more on violence against women in crime and mystery novels, meaning they don't want to see these things anymore?
I don't know. It's tough to say, because I think it's like the criticism of the Barbie movie. It's like, oh, there was too much feminism. It was too much in your face. I'm like, we've never gotten anywhere by being too loud about. I mean, we've never had we've never had feminism move forward by being quiet about it, you know,
Yeah.
or speaking up about it. I don't know. It's really tough to say. It's like I'm not seeing as much as I'd like. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have something great to contribute to that.
All right.
We're still
Okay, so
wrestling with.
let's say consensus is that the conversation is moving, but slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, you're
Yeah.
moving against a lot because I mean, if you think was it Tarana Burke who first came up with the expression "Me Too"? Was for one woman of color to say to another to understand the microaggressions and the assaults that come with institutionalized racism, and that's a lot to push against. And then there's just misogyny in general, and that's a big thing to push against. And I remember people saying that my Emma Fielding character, who was an archaeology professor, was too bossy or too pushy. And it's like, okay. And if I spoke about, sorry, this is back.
No, I was snorting.
Yes, yeah, no, it's stark worthy. And if the people were complaining about this back in 2002, and you try to say, hey, academia is a men's world, and then you get someone saying, well, I think your experience is outdated, and here's why. And I'm like, I'd written this, a young man wrote this to me, and I had this a 3-page single-space email ready to go back to him explaining what he might not have been getting. And my husband said, probably best to edit that and say our experiences are possibly quite different. Your expectations are different from mine. So
Asshole.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, yeah, that's, yeah, and that's it. So it's like, it still seems like it's always been a lot to push against. It's still a lot to push against. And you have people who are literally taking The Handmaid's Tale as a how-to book. So I guess I'm a little bit less sanguine.
On the other hand, I got a how did I even find out about this? A review recently on Concourse, which was my second book and came out in what, 96 or something. And the reviewer said, okay, this is an old book, I get that, but Jesus Christ, this Bill Smith guy is, you know, just a sexist pig. And I thought, oh, okay, you know, that's interesting, because I can understand why you would read that book that way. And if I wrote it today, I would write it differently. And nobody said that then. So, you know, I was kind of pleased with that. I, you know, would like to write to the reader and sort of, you know, apologize and say, read the later ones, it gets better. But it, you know, he was a very, in his attitudes were very kind of iconic PI attitudes, and nobody called him out on that earlier, except Lydia Chin. And now readers are calling him out, and I think that's good. You know, I don't know if they're calling out the PIs of the male writers, but
okay, that's an interesting point.
Yeah, but you know, they're calling out good, so good.
All right. So on a related note, do you all think that the violent alpha male type character that is common in certain subgenres of crime noir has started phasing out of crime mystery fiction in the past decade? Or do you think it's one of the stereotypes that is going to stick around for much longer than expected? Let's start with Meg.
It's going to stick around in some form. It's going to morph. It'll be updated. I think there are too many people who love to read about violence on the page because they think that these are characters who have agency that perhaps they don't in real life, and find a simplistic sense of joy and glory in seeing someone just deal with the situation through violence. Certainly in America, I think that there's plenty of that violence is elevated as rectifying and redemptive in too many situations. So that's going to continue to influence writers and readers who are searching for a vindication that that's a legitimate point of view. And other societies sometimes crime novels feature protagonists, probably largely male, whose point of view is just to get revenge, and that might be because the society is broken, that the civil institutions are broken, and that nobody expects the police force to actually arrest criminals. So when people feel so disempowered that the revenge fantasy can give readers a sense of vicarious satisfaction, thinking that there might be a way to even the scales, even if it's through vigilante justice. But I don't think violence is going away. Human nature hasn't changed yet.
No. I think a lot of those, particularly with regard to thrillers, all the J's, the JBs and the JRs. So Jason Bourne, Jack Reacher, all the Jacks, all the super spies, all the
John Wicks.
John
exactly.
Wick. There you go.
Yeah. There's all that, and I love writing action. I love writing action scenes. I love all that stuff, and I keep going to these movies, and eventually you may see a woman show up. Halle Berry and her murder pups, and John Wick, fabulous. And I just and you'd watch the Bourne movies or read the Bourne books, and you'd have these, or particularly in the movies, I think, because a lot of them when he was alive was really quite careful about what he did with some of the, of Bourne's, with his wife in particular, having her have agency and an ability, is you see all these women who are in the office, and they've all theoretically been trained the same way, and yet they're the ones being rescued. I'm like, no. Let's flip this, and that's I understand that urge to, like, when you get fed up with everything, to just have a Robin Hood moment in your brain, or something that you want to take things in your own hands, and if you can do it creatively, so much the better. But I don't see that character going away and anytime soon.
Well, what's interesting, Dana, is that you and we all can understand that urge.
Yeah.
We're women. And there are, how many times do I just want to go out there and knock someone's block off because, this is just, I've had it. And mostly we don't, and most of the men we know don't either. But, as a woman, I would read a book about a woman John Wick. I would see a woman John Wick movie, because why not? I'm actually reading a really good, I'm going to give a plug here, but a really good fantasy novel right now, in which the narrator is a young woman who has been trained all her life to commit violence. And the book is called Ebony Gate. I highly recommend it if you like fantasy action, Asian fantasy action. And she, the fact that she's a woman is really not the issue. The issue was she was in a position in her family where this was the next thing to happen. It could have happened to a boy, it could have happened to her. And she is completely convincing as a violent, she's, trying to change her ways, because everybody, they suck you back in and all like that. But it, as I'm reading it, I'm thinking this could have been her brother. The story would have been the same.
Yeah.
There is nothing about being a woman that makes this story, this really good story, any different or any less believable. That she has to hold herself back from ripping people to pieces. And so I also don't think that character is going away, But I think the idea that it has to be an alpha male all the time, going out into the streets and doing, his John Wayne number, it I think that character will keep going, but I think it's as easy to believe it can become a woman. I'm not sure that this character is somebody we really need that much. The Jason Bournes and the John Wicks and the even the Jack Reachers, but we are. It is going to keep happening. The sheriff who just walks out with his gun and says, "All right, I am now in charge here," but possibly walks out with her gun. So,
but I think you're right, SJ, in that it's not going to go away. But I think that other genres like science fiction and fantasy are much farther ahead in terms of depicting that sort of thing. Because I need to, even when you do have a woman who is that sort of super spy, trained operative, whatever, there's a moment at the beginning, and I can always find it in the movie, and you can count off the beats. It's like, okay, she's going to be nice to a child, and she's going to be nice to an animal. And she's either avenging her father or her husband or something like that. And it's like, you can count it off. And I'm like, but I think seeing things like, The Expanse or Star Trek Discovery, or as you say, any number of really fantastic fantasy books, you don't have that discussion at all. And it's, might not be a likable character, but it's not necessarily.
That's what interests me about this one, is that the because I hadn't read a lot of fantasy, and we are much farther behind, because in this one, the men and the women are equally divided into good and bad. And they're equally powerful or powerless, and it was something that I would really like to see the crime and mystery genre come to. But I was having a discussion last night with some other writers, one of whom is a consultant to police departments. And she says an absolutely critical milestone will have been reached when police departments are 50% women, because a lot of the violence committed by police is committed by men showing off for other men. And it's in real life. So in a sense, what we do is reflecting real life, which is, fantasy don't have to do that.
Right.
So we have a comment from our producer Regina, actually. So Regina says, the one male thriller protagonist that broke with stereotype is Evan Smoke from Greg Hurwitz's Orphan X series. He was literally taught that women are important people as part of his training.
Okay. Yeah.
But the Evan Smokes of the world are rare.
Evan Smoke is a fantastic protagonist in the Orphan X series. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to talking about stories in general. So one of the ways mystery and crime authors can help with changing patriarchal culture that normalizes violence against women now and in the years to come is to write stories that handle the issues appropriately. So let's get down to the nuts and bolts of storytelling for crime mystery authors who would like to use violence against women as a theme in their stories. Okay, so what are some of the techniques that mystery and crime authors can use to turn toxic tropes that are rife with sexism, misogyny, and or violence against women on their heads, or even use them to send the message to the reader that VAW is never acceptable? Shall we go this way? Dana first, and then...
I was thinking about this, and one of the things I really like, I know people get either they really enjoy or they really hate reboots with a reinterpretation of the main character. And I like it because it's a way to look at a character and often his behavior through a different lens. And so I'm looking at things like Enola Holmes, where you have a different take on what it is like to be a woman in Victorian England with a brain, and you see people who are dragging their heels sort of coming face to face with this. I like that because you did have I mean, it's what's funny to me is, as someone who's studied history, everyone says, well, women didn't do this and that. I'm like, women did. You need to look for it. And if you look for it, you're going to find it. If there are women protesting women's intelligence and rights to autonomy in just about every age you can imagine, it's just that it gets shoved aside for some great speech written by some great man. And I'm using the hate quotes liberally here. But I like that notion of retelling the story from a different point of view. And I think that's really a useful thing. And I happen to love different kinds of reboots. Sometimes they don't need to be made because it's exactly the same story. But if you get to see it through someone else's eyes, you start to question everything else that comes with that. And I quite like that as a oh God, I'll say it, a pedagogical device, just as a way. Yeah, find the academic nerd in the room. Yeah. If you're like, okay, well, what would happen if Sherlock Holmes was a woman? What would happen if X, Y, and Z? And so I think it would be interesting to take all those traditional alpha male and sidekicks, and then just flip the switch on all of them, and mess with all the expectations.
Meg?
It's tough. I was actually thinking my most recent book spans decades, and the villain does commit sexual assault, and starts out as a home invader and committing burglaries, but then the point is to take control of the home and to make himself feel powerful, and he starts assaulting the women who were there, and and beating the men, and then it jumps forward in time where he has evolved to now think that he's a crime mogul, but he owns these terrible seedy motels in Los Angeles, which are rented out by the half hour or by 15-minute increments. But the same detective is basically hunting him. Vincent Hanna is hunting him, and I co-wrote it with Michael Mann, and we wanted to show both the reality of what it was like, and initially the first scenes take place in 1988 in Chicago, and all the detectives are men, and it's about what were the attitudes. And I'm mentioning this because a reviewer, the British reviewer, commented that isn't this old-fashioned? We don't show violence against women anymore. And I thought, well, honey, it's out there. I drove through the streets of Los Angeles to research this book, and I saw it on the street. So don't tell me that we hide it. I mean, we're gonna talk some more about the Staunch Prize, but I thought, I was hoping that nothing in the book is gratuitous or meant to titillate or just put there for the sake of giving some reader their jolly, saying, oh, this is how bad it could get. It was meant to show that these the difference in the power gradient between the men and some very young women who were immigrants perhaps, and had been immediately abused, and to see as well whether the attitudes of the investigators had changed over the course of decades. How when they came upon it in a more modern setting, were they more aware? Were there women on the force investigating this who might be able to have a different perspective and have a way to speak to victims? So I don't even know what my point is, other than
we were talking about techniques of how to address it, and that is a very interesting way of turning the trope on its head. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you answered the question. SJ, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that for me, the critical thing would be to make everyone, and especially the victim, a human being. That is, it's not a prostitute. It's, Jane Jones, who left home at 13 because she was being assaulted by her stepfather and has been on the street for a number of years and had adopted a puppy. That's who got killed, She's a human being, and it's violence against her because she's a woman, but she doesn't experience it that way. She experiences it as a human being who's being attacked, assaulted, murdered, whatever. And that if the women who are being violated are given as much humanity as the rest of the characters, as the villain and the detective, rather than just being the chess, that first move chess piece that gets things going. I think that is the only way to humanize people, is to make them human. And if writers want to, because I think Meg is right, we can't pretend that now we're all enlightened and it doesn't happen anymore. And so we're not going to talk about violence against women. We're not going to put it in our books because, you know, it's not a thing. Of course it's a thing. And it's a bigger thing in some places than others. And it's a bigger thing with some men than others. And it's a bigger thing with some more vulnerable female populations, like young immigrants, undocumented people, and that kind of thing. But they are all human, and they need to be shown as a person who was assaulted in this way, not, victim A. So
Yes.
that would be my recommendation to writers who want to use what really happens, but use it in a way that moves the needle.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. So, can you all share some tips and suggestions for portraying female characters who have experienced some kind of violence against women, rape or domestic violence, or any other form of gender-based violence, without reducing them to the sum of their trauma? Let's go first, SJ.
Well, I think what Dana said before, that there are other motivating factors besides trauma, and that trauma happens to a person who has had a life up till then. It happens to a whole person. It's not that you come into the world and are immediately traumatized and then your life goes, develops from there. You were somebody before that happened, and you were the person you were informs the person you become after the trauma. So you are not the sum of your trauma. You're the sum of all your experiences up to the trauma and then on from there. And even this is true even if the trauma is ongoing, because even people who are assaulted in the home on a daily basis have a life in the other 23 hours. Things happen, and they do things. And I think that recognition becomes the tool with which you can build characters who, without denying that they have been through this trauma, are entire humans, and that if what happened to them had happened to somebody else, the reaction would have been different. Every woman who's been raped doesn't then have the same set of reactions after it for the rest of her life. And I think it goes back to recognition that this is a person, not a victim. That being a victim is something that happens to a person who was a person and continues to be a person. So that.
Yeah, there's a Jordan Harper's new novel, Everybody Knows, has the detective in the is a female Los Angeles Police Department investigator. And as the story develops, we know that she is divorcing her husband, that she doesn't want to see him, but she thinks she keeps seeing him on the street. And it comes out that he had, his life had basically fallen apart. He was becoming very stalkerish, that he had been very threatening within the home, punching the wall next to her head, that kind of thing. And part of the story is not that, she's going to be a tough woman overcoming this, but she already is in a position where she is supposed to be a powerful woman, and she feels an obligation as a female detective to be as tough as the guys. And so she hasn't told anybody about why she's getting divorced or what had happened to her husband. And that it does not take over her life, but part of the story is she needs to figure out how to deal with what she considers a possible continuing threat while she's doing this, doing the investigation, and whether she's going to have the confidence and the courage and to bring it up to people, to other people who might actually be in a position to help her do something about it instead of trying to deal with it solely on her own. But I thought that was beautifully painful and realistic portrayal of a mature, competent adult dealing with something that could happen in far too many situations. Even though sometimes you want to shake her by the lapels and say, don't try to handle this all yourself. There are resources.
Dana?
I'm kind of lost track of what the question is.
Okay, so the question was tips and suggestions for portraying female characters who have experienced violence against women without reducing them to the sum of their trauma.
Yeah, I think it's the idea that SJ and Meg have both touched on. It's like that these things are a continuum. They're not just like a thing that everything else pivots on. And being aware that maybe the response is going to come out in different ways and different responses, depending on with whom that person is interacting. So you might have a woman who's been, suffered a lot of violence, who is talking to her kids or neighbors' kids and saying, this is, like trying to encourage them to be stronger and smarter and more resilient, or less likely to stay in a situation like that. Well, she has quite a different set of rules for her own self for surviving. So I just think it's, again, it comes down to the way that you develop an entire character, and you have things affecting that character before, during, and after an episode of violence.
Makes sense, yeah. So basically, women are people, and write characters as whole people.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you were speaking about the Staunch Prize just now, and when the Staunch Prize was first launched, some authors criticized it, including saying that they will continue to write VAW as long as men continue to commit it, so that it will not go unnoticed. Can examples for justice for women who have experienced sexism and violence against women in crime and mystery novels help advance efforts for justice for women in real life?
Say the question again. I'm sorry.
So the Staunch Prize.
Right.
So you and Meg were saying just now that as long as people continue to commit violence against women, you will continue to write them into your stories, right? Write it into your stories. So my question is, can examples of justice for women who have experienced sexism and VAW help advance efforts for justice for women in real life?
Oh yeah. I think so. I think that showing, I mean, that's kind of literature's job, is showing opening the curtain on what really happens when something happens. So I think that it doesn't help to have the prostitute murdered on page 1, but it does help to show what the result is in the prostitute's family when they find out she's been murdered, what the result is among the other prostitutes, how scared they get, what that forces them to do in terms of banding together or whatever. I do think also I want to say this, that when women in crime novels get murdered, it's not always violence against women in the way that we're talking about here. It can be violence against the matriarch who holds the keys to the family fortune and everybody wants the money. So that you can't, well, you can do anything you want, but it seems to me that it's not a great idea to decide no woman will be damaged in any of my books. I think it's gratuitous violence that we're looking to, that the Staunch Prize, for example, is
Exactly.
and that our job is to avoid that and to show the results of actual violence.
I think so. I think the Staunch Prize was a shot across the bow at gratuitous stories with gratuitous violence against women, and more power to them. I wasn't going to ever be nominated for that prize because I have lots of people, good, bad, pretty, ugly, who all get it in my novels, and I wasn't going to change that. But I was glad that it started a conversation to very publicly say and get a lot of media saying, do we need all these stories where they're, let's open another fridge, let's see who's inside.
I think, well, for me personally, I write characters who I try to aspire to be. I try to be brave the way they are, or I try to be smart the way they are, or I try to be humane or human the way that they are. And so, like, on a personal level, I know when I'm reading a book, I'm looking for an example that's going to help me be the better version of myself. And I think that when you have these fully developed characters, these fully fleshed characters who may have been through trauma, who may have been through many different types of things, as a reader, that's what I am looking for. So I think on a personal level, as a reader, certainly. I was kind of curious, the Mary Higgins Clark Award, how does that compare with in terms of what it looks for? Because I'm trying to remember what it is looking for in terms of violence against women.
No, it's looking for, that prize is looking for the award for no gratuitous violence and no really violence on the page. But you can do away with women all you want.
No language. It's
No
also
language.
Yeah.
Perhaps that the protagonists are relatively clean living. I think.
Yeah.
But,
I'm thinking. I actually, Meg, while you were talking, there was a book by Laura Lippman, which of course I can't remember the name of, where all the characters were women. I mean, the grocery store clerk maybe not, but the main characters, the lawyers on both sides, the police investigator, it was all plausible that each of those would be a woman. It was a little surprising that all of them were women, but I was willing to go with it. But it just occurs to me that one way to win the Staunch Prize would be to do the same thing, except all the characters are men. There's not a woman in the book, and then see how men react to each other under those circumstances. I mean, it would be an interesting experiment to write that.
Yeah, another interesting exercise.
Yeah, everybody's secretary is a man. The guy who delivers the coffee is a man. They're just all men.
Yeah.
And then you could, have as much violence
as you like. So SJ, you have two novels to write now. One where on the first page a prostitute is murdered, and the second one is where all the characters are men.
Yeah, no. But the prostitute is only a short story, because that's what Meg was looking at with short stories, right?
Okay. All right, got it. So we look forward to that. All right. So here I've come to the last few questions. already. So let's talk about tips and recommendations for the mystery crime community, including writers, readers, editors, publishers, with regards to tackling sexism, misogyny, and violence against women. Okay, so do you all have any tips and suggestions for publishers and editors who wish to join efforts to address sexism, misogyny, and violence against women in mystery and crime space? SJ, you go.
Look at the books that are offered to you and pick the ones where women are fully formed characters and the prostitute in the fridge does not start the book. I mean, for publishers, it's fairly easy because they get everything, spread out on the table in front of them. And they are the ones who can say, yes, we're not doing this anymore. We're gonna move into something else. The problem, of course, is that publishing is a business, and if it makes money, they will do it because that's their job. And so the next level is who's buying the books. But I think for publishers, if that's the question, publishers and editors can look at the stuff they're being offered and say, I'm not taking that one. That's done.
Yeah. And they can offer something to authors besides, you want to sell more copies, drop more bodies.
Yeah.
That go darker isn't go darker, go bigger, go more slashings. That is not, that's a dark path.
Yeah. I guess the thing I would suggest, not, far be it for me to dictate to the publishing industry, but just keep an eye on your own brand of the way you've been inculcated in your culture, and say, hey, maybe not everyone experiences life this way. And there have been times when I've been reading stuff and I have a response like, oh my gosh, all these women are all these characters are women and they're all like really competent. I don't know what to do with myself, because it was a welcome rush of and a real wonder to me. So I mean, just remember how you've been raised and question a little bit what the traditions have been, and traditions in publishing, traditions in your culture, that sort of thing, and say, hey, what if it isn't that?
Good point.
Yeah.
All right. So, what mystery and crime books and series would you all recommend for authors and readers to check out as examples of VW tropes and themes being handled well? SJ.
Well, I think Meg Gardiner's work and SJ Rozan's work stand head and shoulders as beacons.
Only to be matched by Dana Cameron.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've answered that question.
Yeah. What I meant was, besides the three of you, any other authors' books that you can recommend?
Sarah Paretsky, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I wish this is the kind of question where I, at 3 a.m, I will call you, Anusha, and tell you the.
Okay.
But Paretsky, Laura Lippman, Megan Abbott.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Alifair Burke.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry,
Alifair Burke.
These are our authors who write strong women going about their business. Sometimes it's criminal business, but it's the fact that they're women doesn't get in their way, which is, these days that's kind of all you can ask for, Yeah. And
I was going to say,
there are others. Well, I mean, Val McDermott, but Val is so dark that I don't know.
I was going to suggest Barbara Neely, because she often deals with issues specifically germane to the discussion we've been having about violence against women and how one can address it without necessarily going into violence one's own self. But just a fabulous writer as well.
I'm trying to think.
It's a starter pack for you.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, that's a lot of names already, and it's really cool that all of them are women. So,
Kelly Garrett. Kelly
Oh,
Garrett.
Garrett. Yep.
Okay, Kelly Garrett.
And I would also recommend, in that same vein, I just finished Cheryl Head's Time's Undoing, and was just completely blown away just by the writing and about the storytelling. And yeah, go get some.
Be interesting
All right.
if we had men to put on that list.
Right.
I'm Alex Segura, the new one, Secret Identity. I hate to leave him alone there on the list now.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure there are men who can write.
We're sure
like,
they, of course, but we
well.
were primed here
Yeah.
to recommend
Yeah.
Yep.
one of our favorite female authors.
All right. Okay, so that actually brings us to the end of our Q&A. So time flew by. We've actually been speaking for like an hour and 15 minutes. Imagine that. So thank you so much to our panel for answering all the questions, for your really great insights and answers, sharing your perspective with us. Now, for everyone who's watching, in case you missed it in the beginning, besides their time here today, Dana, Meg, and SJ have also really generously donated some exclusive goodies, the stash of swag that we have on our Rally Up fundraising page. So I'm just going to go through them quickly. So Dana has given us Dana Cameron's Thrills, Spills, and Scares book and swag bundle for US donors only. It's an amazing bundle that is about different types of reading experiences. So we have the Urban Fantasy Read, which is a signed and personalized copy of Pandora's Orphans, a Fangbond collection. The Crime and Thriller Read, which is a signed and personalized copy of Exit Interview. The Horror Read, which is signed and personalized special edition paperback of Giving the Devil His Due. This is a collector's edition because it's out of print. And then the Swag, which is a set of Fangborn book plates and one limited edition Giving the Devil His Due book plate. And SJ offered two very special treats for donors in the US. The first one has actually been snapped up. It was a hand-annotated first edition hardcover copy of her multi-award winning and nominated Shanghai Moon that contains SJ's personal insights and notes, and it's been snapped up by an anonymous donor. Still available is the signed and personalized first edition hardcover of Mandarin Plaid, the third book in her long-running Magnificent Lydia Chin and Bill Smith series. There are only 3 copies of this book available, so one each for 3 donors. And these are hardcovers that are also out of print, and they come from SJ's personal stash. It's a great way to snag a rare collectible, so go and donate now. And finally, Meg Gardiner has given us for international donors a 30-minute one-to-one video chat. For any donor who is an aspiring crime author, Meg will be very happy to chat with you about the art and craft of writing and the business of publishing. All right, so there are also, besides these amazing treats, there are also plenty more author goodies available from authors including Anne Bishop, Brandon Sanderson, C.S.E. Cooney, Charlene Harris, Emily X.R. Pan, Grim Oaks Press, Mary Robinette Cowell, Jen Williams, Jasper Ford, and many, many more. So we've raised $3,185 towards our $10,000 goal so far. So please do give generously before the fundraiser ends in October. All funds go towards the Pixel Project's work to help end violence against women. Now I'm going to share with you all where you can go. So this is the link for the goodies on the Rally Up fundraising page. And don't worry, this link is going to go up in the chat box. Our producer Juliana is going to put them up there. So the Rally Up page is tinyurl.com/r4p Rally Up 2023. If you're typing this out, be careful, it's case sensitive. Meanwhile, if you want to find out more about Read for Pixels, we have more panels and more authors coming up. Go to our Read for Pixels page on our website. It's bit.ly/readforpixels. This link is also going to go up. All right, and I want to talk about Giving the Devil His Due. So if you can't snag the collector's edition one from Dana, you can still get the book on Google Play, Book Depository, all major booksellers worldwide. It's still up there. It is a limited edition. It's going to go out of print in October, so you have about a month and a half left. And like I said, this is a charity anthology by the Pixel Project. It contains 16 short horror stories. It's kind of like Promising Young Woman meets The Twilight Zone, so very cool. And Dana's story is in them. And it's also available in audiobook. So you can go to Google Play, Spotify, Kobo, Chirp, any other major audiobook retailers worldwide. It's available there as well. So like I said, all net proceeds go towards keeping the Pixel Project's campaigns, programs, and initiatives such as this one alive and kicking. And if you want to find out more about violence against women in general, we have lots of resources on our website, www.thepixelproject.net. So before we sign off, any announcements from our amazing panel? Anything coming up soon?
I have a new Bill Smith, Lydia Chin book. I say it that way because Bill is the narrator of this one, and he has really evolved over the years. The book is called The Mayors of New York, and it comes out early December.
Right,
I have a new novel called Shadow Heart, which is number 4 in the Unsub series, which will be out later this fall.
Mm-hmm. And in addition to Exit Interview, which is it's a, let's say, high concept run and gun thriller, all women, all in the major character roles, no patting dogs, no patting babies in the first chapter. But my wonderful agent is currently shopping around my 18th century noir novel called Anna Hoyt, based on the short stories. And she deals with her traumas and violence against women and takes matters into her own hands. And that's as much as I'm going to say. That. But we're hoping that comes. Sorry?
Serious badass, Anna Hoyt.
Yeah. When is it coming out?
Oh, my agent is shopping around, so we're waiting for a really talented and beautiful and smart, editor to snap it right up.
Okay. All right, so thank you so much, and we will wish everybody out there a good day or good night wherever you are in the world, and goodbye.
Bye. Thank you, Anusha.
Thank you so much, Anusha.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.